Hey Lance, I got a question for you. Is Radahn trash?
No, he's kind of redonkulous. Got him.
Okay. I think I agree. I think that Radahn is how you would say redonkulous.
Hmm.
He is a
Yeah,
boss that pivots between being completely unmanageable and a complete pushover, which is kind of hilarious. But I think him being a complete pushover isn't necessarily thematically inappropriate. But yeah, why do you think that he is redonkulous?
yeah. So beyond the fact that I'm just a sucker for a terrible pun, my take on him is more what he represents
Mm-hmm.
to the game, where he is the Starscourge. He is larger than life, physically, narratively, thematically. He is holding back the very stars. He is blocking Ronnie's fate. He is an obstacle to Blythe into the story's progression in that avenue. He represents the warrior's might that Alexander desires and is seeking after. He feels almost like a cardboard cutout of a like WWE star.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Where the cutout is even bigger than the person.
That's
He's
true.
no longer what he used to be. He is an imitation of that. But he is still imposing in every way, and you can see his glory and what his glory was.
And that, I mean, that's a good point because, like, even debuffed in like the scarlet rot addled brain state that he's in, he's still holding back the stars,
Yes.
and he still is apparently sentient enough to keep his gravity facade going on with Leonard.
Yeah. That's like the only thing that he still knows is that he loves Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leonard on his own makes the boss uh, like best boss in the game
Of
tier.
course.
Um, yeah, no, I
You're a
think.
sucker for a good like horse companion.
Oh
I just
man,
realized that. Like,
the roaches of the world, they just do
yes.
something special, you know.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think that's what you liked about the Zelda game that
Oh, with the
you were like you threw yourself into with full abandon.
trying to remember which one that was. The oh, Ghost of Tsushima. Oh yeah. When I
Oh
was
yeah, that Zelda game.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one that's
Ghost of
not a
Tsushima is
Zelda
a Zelda
game at
game.
all. Yeah, and I got to name my horse, and we named it after Jimmy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You're just a good fan of those.
I'm a fan of animal companionship.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think that he is he is physically imposing, right? And again, I think the more you dig into the lore, you realize how sad his whole state, his whole existence is. Like, it's like he's a caged animal and they just throw people for him to eat. Like, he doesn't know what's going on anymore. He's crazy. Which is sad because if you pay attention to the lore up to the point, you just hear about the great General Radahn, the mightiest of the demigods. Like, I mean, he's a figure to behold. It makes me wonder, like, what if he wasn't corrupted? What would that fight have been like? Because I've only tried to fight him 1v1 a couple times, and it is already pretty tough.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it would be a nightmare. That's a very interesting thought experiment because if he had not, if he and Melania had not come to blows, if it had not gone the way that it did, I mean, we wouldn't really be doing any of this. The Radahn Festival is like a result of that corruption. It is us
Right.
trying to give him
Reprieve.
that warrior's death.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of goes into my thoughts on the whole setup in the intro cutscene where they just establish him as being shattered and feral.
Yeah.
This is a mercy.
Right.
This is an this is an Old Yeller moment.
It is. But Old Yeller has a shotgun.
Yeah, that didn't feel good to say. That was not in my notes for this, but it came to me. Like, we're there to celebrate his victories and to honor his achievements, and we're there to take his loot.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, fundamentally, he does have a great rune. Like, that's the reason we're there.
Right.
Like, as tarnished in terms of like the game setup. Like, he is an obstacle. He is one of the places that we can go to get what we need to go burn the
proceed.
Erd
Yeah,
tree.
to proceed. His great rune is also like objectively excellent too. But maybe before we dive too far into that, I always like to start by just, picking your brain about the approach to Radahn. And I feel like this one is pretty dang succinct, especially if you take the travel portal on the bridge into
Yes.
Redmane Castle.
Yep.
But tell me, like, I don't think the festival's clearly like laid out for the player until you're there, or if you were paying some very subtle attention to, I don't even know if subtle attention to Alexander. If you were paying attention to Alexander, he tells you he's going to participate in a festival.
Yeah.
But tell me about you approaching Radahn.
Sure. I mean, you kind of alluded to the place where my awareness kind of began of like early game in Limgrave. When you interact with Alexander, he is hinting at this festival that's taking place in Caelid, the Radahn Festival, or Redmane Castle's festival. I don't recall the exact like description he uses, but it's very quickly starting to set up that you're going to end up in this place and there's a party, because at this point you don't know anything about Radahn. You just know that there's a festival there somewhere. And I mean, at the time I was like, is this going to be like I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit more like Toussaint in The Witcher.
Oh yeah,
Like a festival. I was like,
right.
How is this gonna go?
Like happy.
Yes, I have no context for this game or this world yet. I know that that's not the tone of a Souls game in general.
Right.
That's really all I knew, though. I was like, that does not jive with everything that Limgrave has been telling me about myself.
Yeah, there's an incongruence.
Where you are small and you do not matter, and everything will step on you. But we go through the first little Alexander intro, and then that dissonance grew in Caelid, because everything about Caelid is just, it is toxic. And I mean that in a much more literal, where everything wants to give you scarlet rot.
Right.
Everything is terrifying. The birds, the dogs, everything breathes fire at you. That stupid ruin right after the greatsword carriage.
Oh yeah.
Where there are like 5 of the fire carriages.
Chariots. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like everything about that was just terrible. And I think that was when I started to question my own assumption about like, what is this festival going to be? It's not going to be happy, because I went to Caelid very briefly early in the game after I got my ass kicked by Anastasia. I don't remember how she's actually pronounced, at the church. I went up there to the first site of grace. I saw the birds chilling on the branches, like out in the distance,
with their teeth.
With their teeth and their dramatically large heads. Yep. I was like, I'm gonna go anywhere else. I don't like this at all. And I was right. I did not like this at all. Like the Shack of the Rotting was about as close as I was willing to get to Caelid for a while. But then I swung back around after Liurnia, and all the way down through like the jail cave, Fort Gale, the waypoints, Exix, or Exikis. I realizing now I don't say a lot of these names out loud. Like everything there is just terrifyingly deadly.
Right.
Especially when it was so early in my like experiences with Souls games. I didn't know how to fight so many things yet. And also, going to talk to Garank, like you can tell from the map that's Caelid, getting put in the forever box in the lake,
right,
in Limgrave, and getting sent to the Crystal Tunnel.
Yeah,
like that. The entire messaging of Caelid is, this is a dangerous, terrible place, and it's Radahn's place. Right. This is his area. It's his zone. It's his domain. Like that all set up this pretty terrifying mental image of what I was in for.
Of like who's in charge of this place? If this place is terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, in much of the same way that like, I mean, not so much Margit, but Godric. Like after Stormvale kicked my ass, it's like, all right, who the hell is running this place?
Right.
And same with like the Halig tree.
Right.
After all of that, the boss isn't going to be fun, and it was, but it also wasn't. So the same way, when I rolled up to the Radahn Festival, or I should say Redmane Castle in general, I had already triggered the festival itself. Like it was active when I got there, but I did not take the waypoints. My first time in that like part of the world, like from the bridge side of Grace, the Impassable Great Bridge, I did a whole bunch of like circling around and climbing stuff on the outside of the castle and just thinking, this is suspiciously quiet. Why
Right.
is it empty? Why is nothing happening here? And then I found that little area off behind the castle with the
The
singing
bats.
bat. And that was, I think I died there actually.
No shame, I've died there.
Those singing bats are like the bane of my existence
Yeah.
still. So I was like, there's more to this. And then I kind of tripped and stumbled my way into the castle itself. And then it made a lot more sense. I'm going to just skip right over the 2 lions because I fought them like a coward. I pulled out my bow, stayed as far away from them as I could, and just let them like leash and then run back to their original point because
And just get a shot. Yeah, one is hard enough.
Yeah, 1 is bad. 2 was
Very
like
bad.
I'm going to be here, all day. It's like the game gave me the tools. I'm going to use them. So minimal Redmane Castle exploring, but the actual plaza with the festival itself taking place was really interesting because I saw familiar faces. Like Blythe, okay, I knew he was going to be there. There was some passing reference to that from Ronnie's questline and your interactions with him. Like I had done the whole go talk to Selin, go talk to Celavis. I didn't really like understand it all
Right.
at the time. I just knew that I needed to go talk to these people. So, that's like I didn't realize the festival had been quote triggered and kicked off. But seeing him there, I was like, oh yeah, you make sense, Alexander. Okay, yeah, good. Glad you could make it. All these other like spectral people that I didn't really recognize and who I didn't have a lot of context for, like Okina, Lionel, Theralina, and then Jaren, doing his whole announcer. I'll call him Discount Gale.
Right. I mean,
Discount Gale giving his speech. It was a interesting moment because it seemed like, from what I knew from mostly you talking about Souls games, like this was more NPC interaction in one place than I had expected in the open world or in the overworld.
Right.
Like Roundtable Hold has a lot of NPCs. The hubs typically do. That's video game. What would the word be? That is in the language of video games. The hub zone probably has a lot of interaction.
It's a norm.
But seeing all of these people in one place outside of there was like a little bit. It was exciting. It was kind of disconcerting.
Right.
Okay, are we all going to be here? And at first, I still thought it was going to be like an anime tournament arc was kind of what I had expected.
Right.
I didn't really grasp that we were all going to fight Radahn. I was expecting this to be like, I have to square off against this person, and then we're going to fight the winner of this other bracket. Like, I was expecting it to be like a bracket competition. And then the cutscenes and the voiceover dialogue begins with Jaren, and I realized what was actually happening.
Right.
As I like made my way across to the waygate in the teleporter, I was like, oh, I'm in so much trouble. And then you like get control of your character in the battlefield, and you see this tiny little dot in the distance.
Yep.
It flashes purple.
Right.
And then the purple part approaches
Very
and
quickly.
takes your head clean off.
Yep, and then it kills you.
And then it kills you. That was my like walk up process. The culmination of this is exactly what I didn't expect, but somehow knew was going to happen.
It's very the calm before the storm.
Mhm. Yes.
My favorite part of Redmane Castle during the Radahn Festival is that they've got the like streams or the streamers set up over the like the wooden poles that have swords hanging from them. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's like they didn't have actual like party decor, so
They don't have
like
a party city in the lands between.
Right, exactly. So they had to go and just tape random swords and weaponry and sheets of metal on top of it. I thought it was really I don't know why it made me funny. I'm like, oh yeah, like technically this is a decoration. Technically this is a festival. It's a festival of battle. This is kind of funny.
Yep.
I took the same route actually that you did to get into the castle, and mostly because the game is like at this point taught you that you shouldn't trust the waygates because they're going to take you bad places.
Yes.
And so like I went around, I'm pretty sure I died to the bats too, but I died on my second playthrough, not my first.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny. And then I stand by it being best to like have the two like kill the two beasts then and not when the festival is inactive, just because there's less stuff to deal with.
Yeah, there's not a
Yeah,
wall of turrets and
right. It's just the two beasts, and I did it the same way. And I thought I do agree with you. Like my impression was like I figured it wouldn't be as like it was more empty than I expected too. Like it subverted my expectations as well. But it was like kind of nice to see all your friends there and like just like be in the camaraderie amongst friends, right? Like that kind of group setting is just so uncommon. And usually if you do meet somebody else, it's like one or two people. So it was nice to be amongst other people.
And they usually want to kill you.
That's true. That was a super cool, different experience. I love Gale's whole speech, like setting up Radahn. Or, not Gale.
No, he's Gale. That hood, you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah. So
it's Gale's brother or cousin or something.
Yeah, like it is Gale. But like that whole speech that he gives the entire time, that you're like watching Radahn like kind of schlup about. Like I don't know a better way to put that.
He's just trudging.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of like inherited glory culture is probably the best way. Like there's a lot of there's valor, there's honor, everything about Radahn, but he's like in this decrepit state. Like, but everyone's talking about how powerful he is. Again, this is just an allusion back to what I said at the very beginning of the video. But like, it made me wonder, like, if this is what he's like now, what was he like before the Scarlet Rot like rotted his brain? Right, like because he's effectively just reptilian at this point, and there's no emotions, no nothing. But I think as far as the setup goes, it really nails the head of like building this imposing character and giving you the first glimpse of who they are. Because up to that point, I think really all you've gathered is that there was a fight between this person named Radahn, this person named Melania. They are both demigods, and they are both very strong, right? You have the note off of the Mimic Tear that, or the Mimic Veil or whatever it's called, that says that Godric used it to run away from Radahn, right? Like to hide amongst the women and run away as Radahn was like hunting him down.
Yep.
And Godric up to that point is technically like, I don't think he's one of the few bosses you've probably fought at that point that are significant cutscene bosses. So then when you finally get to see him and he is giant, like he is big mode, and he's got this giant crown of red, like the fiery red hair. I mean, he is imposing as all get out, right? Just clad in that gold armor. So I mean, it truly is like, it is a spectacle in itself to view the introduction of Radahn.
Agreed. It almost reminds me now that I've played the other ones, like the way that they set him up and just give him this imposing look. Like if I had played Dark Souls 3 first and had context on the Nameless King, seeing Radahn's just appearance and like the way that they modeled his armor, his helmet, would have hit that much harder, because like he was terrifying without that knowledge. But like if I had known that, like if that hairstyle had meant what it means to me now, I would have been so much more scared the whole time. Because like you see him in like the cutscenes and opening cinematics briefly as well with no context, and then in the fight cinematic when he's like trudging with Leonard, you see more of it. I would have been so much more frightened than I already was.
Right. I mean that's absolutely true. If anything, for the probably the flashback and PTSD you would have on trying to fight the Nameless King with the camera going everywhere in phase 1.
Yeah, you're not fighting the Nameless King, you're fighting the camera.
That's true.
The Nameless King is just there for the ride.
That's right. But then your point is, like he always opens up with the same arrow. Like you don't even have time to like know where you're at. he's just already throwing shit at you. He's like, all right, we make fight now. And he just starts shooting arrows at you like it's no big deal. So with that being said, maybe we can go ahead and let's start unpacking the fight itself.
Mm-hmm.
What was the fight like for you mechanically?
This isn't intended to be a joke, but it's going to sound like one. But it was just all scared, tarnished noises.
That's fair, because everything can just kill you.
Yeah, my first playthrough, I probably wasn't like good enough to fully grasp the value of a full health bar and a big red bar. Like, health was just a resource that I was going to use.
Right.
And he used all of it.
I kind of like that the fight opens up with, like, if I think about where things could go wrong, for either playstyle, because I kind of think of it like you can either decide to go what I call the command and conquer route, which is where you summon a bunch of stuff and let them deal with your problems, or the valor route where you go and you 1v1 Radahn. I think that no matter which path you decide to go, I like that it does open up with just combat immediately, because the only path where the command and conquer route can go wrong is if you get nailed at the very beginning, right? The second you get your first summon off and you dodge the first 3 or 4 arrows, you're kind of okay at that point. The fight basically does itself. I mean, I the one thing that I think we both do all the time is obviously summon Patches so he can just nope the fuck out of there. That's obviously hilarious. Like, there's so much flavor in the fight itself. I will say that as far as like, this is not to say there's a right or a wrong way to play. I think that doing the fight 1v1 and doing the fight command and conquer style are enriching in 2 very different ways. So like, if you do it where you're summoning all the people and running around and like just sending them into the meat grinder, I almost think of it as like, he is General Radahn, so I think of it almost like general versus general. You obviously don't see any of the moves, right? You don't see the moves. I mean, you see the moves, but you don't have to deal with the moves. You just
there's no interaction,
right? You just walk around. And so like, you're just like watching it's like you're watching a wrestling like match. You're there at the event, and you have the option to enter the cage on accident. Like, that's really what that is. I think that on the flip side of that, if you go and you do the 1v1 fight, it is in a style of fight that I really, really like, that being the one-on-one duel type scenario. I think that if you try to summon and do the like go and help everybody in the like 1v1 process, makes it a lot harder, because he has a lot of AoE attacks that need a very specific dodge pattern to like get away from, and the more company that you bring into that scenario, the more likely you are to like get clipped by something on accident. I've died multiple times trying to like do a hybrid approach.
It's like the dragons, summoning on them. I mean, I'm sure there are people that summon on dragons with great success, but for me, it simply introduces too many variables to their moveset and too many directions something can go in and come from that just are disadvantageous. Like, it is easier to hang back or to just get in the mix on your own.
I would agree with that. But then like, if you think about like what the representation is of like the 1v1 duel, it truly is like it is a battle of warriors against one another, right? Like that, and that is like, either way is the purest representation of like what the Radahn Festival is about. The intentionality, regardless of how difficult one is versus the other, it doesn't matter. The intention of that moment is achieved either way, and I think that's pretty cool.
I agree. Like, no matter how you choose to engage with the fight, and I don't have strong opinions on the right way to do it. I don't have there's no stigma to me around summoning. I don't think it's a more noble victory in that sense. Like, it's set up as a festival for a reason. All these people talk about it for a reason. Like, the NPC quest lines that intersect with it, like Alexander's and Blythe's, but more Alexander's in terms of how it is specifically relevant. Like, he will talk as if you summoned him. His quest line is written under the assumption that you bring him out in that fight. Like, for at least in terms of cohesion, like, it's what shatters him, like his jar, literally. It's what makes him go, for a little soak in the lava
Right.
up north. Like, it is what fuels that entire back half of his quest line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Blythe talks about how pleasing it was to fight Fang. Fang and sword, or
next to you.
Claw and sword. Yeah, like next to you, though, in pursuit of Ronnie's goals. Like, these are discussions that those characters have that don't change if you don't summon them, but they are written from the perspective that you did.
I also think that that's a good point. Like, to add on to that thought, usually the like summoning option is a single time. You don't get to resummon them, and
Yes.
it is one person. I mean, two if you count your ashes, obviously, but like it's very clear that the intention was for you to bring those people in, because there are multiple summon signs that can be used over and over again. And so like, I think that if that is part of the developer's intention, then you are intended, like, both ways are options, and you should be like, they should deliver a different experience to you. When you summon, Radahn can still, like, his damage is so high, he can just kill you outright, even if you are doing the command and conquer general style. Like, if you get too close, those gravity rocks they will hold, despite everyone else being around them, to shoot you if you get too close.
Oh yeah,
right?
He's saving those for someone special, and you are that special someone.
Right. And also, I think if you don't do the general style fight, you don't get to really admire how powerful these characters, who I think most of us would agree are, like, at that point for sure, of a greater strength than us. Like, Blythe could easily kill us at that moment.
Agreed.
Alexander could kill us at that moment. He doesn't believe that, but he definitely could. Like, everybody who... Okina, for sure, could kill us, no problem.
I mean, Okina will happily kill us when we're at the mountaintops of giants.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
So, you've got all of these people who I think are, like, greater than we are. And he is literally blendering through them. And if you played it...
Tragoth? Like, a unit.
Absolutely. If you were to do it 1v1, you wouldn't get to, like... I think it's the only way to truly get a glimpse, like, as a third party, the might that the character has, and draw the parallel between the story and the person. And, like, also his attacks, like, they just look cool. Big purple explosions, that just looks cool. So,
I mean, gravity magic just looks sick in this game.
Yeah, it really does. Like, it's just...
No argument there.
Yeah, I don't have anything else there. But at the same note, like, my favorite fights in the games are the 1v1 duels, the Artorias style fights. And if you get to go and, like, play against him as a combatant, it is, like, it is rewarding and enriching as any one of those fights would be, right? Like, it is still like a battle of bests. Or a battle of two warriors against each other. It's harder. Like, there's no doubt about it. It is a harder fight if you do it that way. But it is definitely, like, a fun and rewarding experience. So, tell me, the first time that he meteors, what did you think was going on?
I don't even have a funny remark for this. The first time he meteored, I just died. Because I mean...
You didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, like, he just disappeared. I knew the fight wasn't over because I knew his health bar was empty, but beyond that, I had no context for it whatsoever. So I was mostly like, okay, is there a cutscene? No cutscene. And then the screen got bright and I exploded.
Right. I've actually never been hit by that attack. Editing a mod here. Just wanted to go ahead and say that since making this statement that I've never been hit by the meteor, I have been clobbered by the meteor several times in just trying to get the footage for this video. So if you're wondering if Miyazaki is listening to you actively talk shit about his game, he is. So, I don't know. Cut your losses and just don't say anything if you haven't been hit by an attack. Alright, we'll continue with the video.
Really?
I've never been hit by that attack.
All right.
Not to, like, brag, but, like, I have no concept of how much damage it does, because every time that, like, it happens, I immediately torrent up and run away. Like, I just pick a direction and go.
You have chosen very well each time then.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. No, I mean it's a cool ass attack. He's the only boss that I know who uses his own body as a missile. like Renala uses children as missiles. He uses his own body as a missile, which is pretty fucking impressive.
It is, yeah. I mean, Leonard's helping.
That's a good question. Does he bring Leonard up with him whenever he like comes down, and how does he protect poor Leonard?
I feel like the answer to the first question is yes, because Leonard's not like running around on the battlefield waiting for him.
Could you imagine though?
If you think that would just make you think that phase 2 is Leonard alone. Like, Radahn disappears, his health bar wasn't empty, you know it's not done, but
Arise, Leonard.
yeah, Leonard is just running around like doing quick little pivots and circles.
Can you imagine the opening cutscene? Arise, ye Leonard!
Yeah, dude, I mean, Leonard is probably the main character.
I think so.
I would support that. I'd play that game.
I'd play that game too.
But yeah, that was my first experience with it, was just sheer terror. Like, his attacks are incredibly cool looking. Like, I mean, again, gravity magic is 10 of 10 in this game. Like, it looks sick.
Yeah, I mean, we were actually like right before we were recording, we just unlocked Estelle's Meteor on my my strength and character, and we just
on your Radahn playthrough.
On my Radahn playthrough, and we just watched me like unload a full Estelle Meteor on the magma worm in the consecrated snowfields, and it evaporated the health bar.
Yeah, like, you also did some pretty wrong-minded things to Tanith's Crucible Knight.
Yeah, that's oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, and so like gravity magic is super. It is over the top, obnoxious, and very cool. It is all of those things. So phase 2, I think, is pretty similar to phase 1 mechanically, but I think the whole like outside of there's more gravity magic, he's more angry. The only other thing that I like to just comment on is like, unlike most big bosses, he is super agile. Like, he moves quickly around the arena, and I think I've got some footage of where I'm like doing the general playstyle where I'm kind of far away, and it's like 2 seconds he goes from like one side of the map to he's like trying to kill me. I think that's a good thing. It breaks your expectation of how the big lumbering hulking boss should work.
Agreed. Like, his this is a weird metric to measure it by, but I really like watching Soteric's no hits.
Yeah,
where he's done like all of the bosses, like no hit, no summons, physical damage only,
right,
sort of playthroughs. And the thing that stood out to me, just because that's such a showcase of skill, like that dude is
really good at the
unbelievable game. And like it shows just a really deep understanding of the attack patterns and the mechanics, almost like in a level 1 run,
right,
where you have to know every part of the combo chain. You have no flexibility there, you don't have breathing room, you have no margin or buffer. But the thing that jumped out to me from his Radahn video when he no-hit it was how quickly and how frequently he was dodging. The thing that it reminded me of the most during some of Radahn's like more dangerous attack patterns, and this is also partially because he's trying to get attacks in, he is trying to like dodge very aggressively to like end the fight.
Right.
He's looking for windows, but the ways that he is dodging and the speed that Radahn attacks with is most reminiscent of like Melania, and even in some cases like the waterfowl.
Yeah,
like I mean the speed and the like back and forth and forward and then like in a different direction to quickly get one hit in.
Right.
It is so fast, and it is coming from one of the bigger bosses in the game, which I love.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. That like the person, the boss that is most comparable to him is Melania.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, if the summons weren't available, more people would bounce off the game. I would think.
Agreed. I do actually. You mind if I jump in there?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because I do think that's maybe one point of friction. Like, I'm sure anybody listening and you speaking have probably noticed I don't have a ton of opinions on the fight itself, like mechanically. I like what it represents. I like the way it feels. I like the vibe of Radahn, the story they build up.
Right.
But like his moveset is cool looking, in much the same way that like Renala's is really cool looking.
Right.
but I don't have a ton of opinions on the boss fight itself. And I think that is because in designing it to be flexible and to feel good, like you said, where it feels like you can either play the Command and Conquer or like the I'm a general too, I just have troops approach versus the one-on-one duel and showdown. Like in delivering a fight that can accommodate both of those approaches and still have all of the theme and the spectacle and the feeling is captured
Right.
appropriately, like the mechanics of the fight and the way that he feels, kind of, if you were to just take him out of context and just drop him into like an arena, like kind of Monster Hunter style, for lack of a better term, like he would feel very diminished in a like in a vacuum. He is not an interesting boss to me.
Really?
He is only interesting because of the story around him.
Yeah, I disagree there. I think that because I've fought him a few times one-on-one, and just enough to like at least get a feel for what his combos are like and stuff like that. I think that he falls closer to a Godfrey, where like he has a lot of chains that are honest and very readable, like he
Sure, yeah,
with some very clear windows, but I think he teaches how to fight himself better than like a Melania. And I think because he has a very clear conveyance of how to fight him, paired with like what I would call an equivalent caliber of backstory to Melania, that he is a better boss fight to me than her.
Interesting. Yeah, and to your point, it's readable.
Yeah, and like you get, so you do still have you have the spectacle of everything. You have the atmosphere that's been built up between the two of them, or like the atmosphere that's been built up for Radahn, and you have a moveset that is like complicated and powerful, like complicated enough and powerful enough.
It's not just one hit's like a magma worm.
Right.
Like, you're not just dodging like one attack or a back and forth.
Right. To make it feel like you've earned or achieved something either way. You know, yeah. So like I would say that like it doesn't feel, I don't think generic is the right term. Or like it feels like it's diminished even in a vacuum. I think that and again, this is my opinion.
Sure.
Right? Like I think that a lot of people can miss the quality because they have the alternate route that is also of quality to summon and not interact or engage with him at all, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, even now, like I've fought him a few times, 1v1. Like I still fuck up his fight, but multiple times, like a lot. So
sure.
So I think that it's good. To me, it's better than like Melania's fight, but like they would be in the same tier almost. Like they would get the same grade. It's just I have a preference. If that makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
It's like A versus A plus. Not to just skip to grading, because I don't know if that's I want to think while I unpack the music before we like give a grade. That was more so an example. Which, speaking of music, now might be a good time to dive into that.
By all means.
When I was in the band in high school, I hated French horn players, so I'm going to start with that. Okay. This theme opens up with French horns, and it feels so right, because the French horn, for whatever reason, does the battle horn sound so well. So right off the rip, you get this like very distinct brassy French horn, just preparing you for the destruction that's going to be coming your way. And then what it does is it actually builds the theme similar to how Bear McCreary builds Kratos' theme, where everything is very percussive. In the brass lines, in the percussion, and the strings, like there's this march type cadence to it. And the parallel that I drew in God of War was that they're the drums of war. This is no different. Like this is General Radahn, the warrior, has the drums of war around him. He is about to come and make fight on you. Like it is building up the ambience and grandiose of this character, right? Around 40 seconds, you get this choir that jumps in. I like to think of it as the festival goers. Like that's how I think about it. People who are chanting and like accolading this character Or you could also think of it as like the spirits of Radahn's fallen warriors. Yeah, because you've got that catacomb that's in the back where all the warriors are basically Valhallaing for life, like fighting for eternity, for glory and honor, right? Like it could also be that whole concept. That's kind of the opening salvo. It's very like foreboding and menacing. It is antagonistic in tone, right? Directly antagonistic. I think that's important to say that lays out, and it moves that way. At 2 minutes and 13 seconds, you have the melody shift to the brass, and you also have the choir that's like intermingling in there as well, and it actually builds up to be like a climax. And just for context, the soundtrack is a 6-minute track, so if at 2 minutes we're already like climaxing, like something's weird, right? Well, this is about when the first phase would be over. So the song climaxes and it gets quiet, and I think it stays quiet for like it's a long time. It's like 40 seconds on the track itself. It's very quiet because Radahn at this point has jumped up into the sky, and in the actual fight itself, when he jumps up in the sky, the sound cuts. Like it's just like, oh, like you said, it's like, well, wait, what do? I know the fight's not over. Like, what just happened? And then at 3:03, you get this giant percussion swell as Radahn is rocketing back down to Earth, and then the next part of the song starts. So I think the instrumentation is really impressive because the percussion, as they're like coming in, they're making that like mock break, like sound or like air disruption, sound disruption.
The
effect that you would imagine.
Barrier.
Yeah, like that is the sound that they're imitating as they enter into the next movement of the piece, right? So I think that instrumentation is really smart. I think the instrumentation in phase 1 is also like intelligent because they're taking you on this emotional ride. I'll show you how like the first part of the arc is like Radahn is scary, Radahn is powerful. Then you get to the second phase, which is the meteoring down, and then the funny thing is that in the second movement, which would align with the second phase of the fight, the instrumentation presence shifts slightly. You get more strings coming through in the actual like chorus of the song. It's still brassy, it's still percussive, but like whereas before I would consider them like a supplementary sound, they're much more present. And for me, when I think about strings, I usually think about fluidity of a sound, because the way that their bow works, because it is a consistent up and down. There's always sound that's being made from like a violin or a cello or anything like that. And what that mirrors in that moment is this it's like a dance. It's like the dance of death is the way that I put it. You see Radahn, and I mentioned the way that he moves across the map. He'll literally do like these like half clock turns, and he'll be behind you, and in that moment you start to recognize that you're kind of lockstep with him whenever you're actually if you're actually doing the 1v1 fight, where like you two are in the throes of battle and you two are really more like dance partners going back and forth. And so the presence of the strings makes it feel more like, it helps it convey that feeling of like, oh, it's your turn, my turn. It's a back and forth. It's an ebb and flow. And so you have I like that they built up the platform of the strings to change it didn't change the feeling, but it changed the tempo. It changed the fluidity of the way that the battle itself was going, right? And what's also interesting about that is that it also shifts the perspective of what you represent within the tale of Radahn. You are no longer just the scared person going to fight the big thing. He is an equal. You are fighting on par, on the same page as Radahn, right? You are his partner in this dance of death. And I mean, you could kind of say the same thing from the general's perspective. You are as good a general as he could have been. You are commanding troops in a way that helps you overtake him. You're besting him in this combat challenge. That's kind of the theme. going from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And then at 5 minutes, we're undoubtedly at the climax of the fight, right? The tone of the song shifts completely. Like I mentioned, at the beginning of the fight, it's menacing. He is the clear antagonist. You have a very, what I would call a standard Dark Souls sound profile. And then by the 5-minute mark, the brass composition shifts to be more valorous. It's not as dark. The sound brightens up. It's still powerful. And I like to think that it is speaking to you, the player, and also speaking to Radahn, the character. It's the whole, like, I've never had so much fun. I've never had to try so hard. I'm enjoying this. I am embracing my warrior spirit. Very much in the way that, like, Godfrey would, which is a parallel that Radahn and Godfrey you can draw between them, because, like, he literally emblazons a lion on his chest because he respects Godfrey so much.
Yep, that's like a well-established lore thing. Is like
exactly
how much Radahn like looked up to Godfrey.
Right, and so like this idea that we are embracing our warrior spirits, and it's the two of us against each other, or like it's these two. Even if you do go the summon route, if it's these two forces against each other, or it's these two warriors against each other, you can do either one, and it still makes sense.
Yes.
But what's distinctly important in that tone shift is that it is no longer antagonistic. It's not like evil. It's not like directly in opposition to you yourself, the character. And what happens is when the song ends, right? The song at 5 minutes and 50 seconds, you have the strings come in to support the exit notes. It actually ends on what I would consider it ends on these softer instruments. It's not brassy. It's not super percussive. I know I think I mentioned this to you at some point, like earlier before we started recording, but like I think of those notes in the exit is like it's almost as if Radahn became lucid in that moment in his death. Like maybe we got a glimpse of the person who we were granting that mercy to, and we gave him the death he deserved. Like in a very almost like Nordic sense, like he regained his own sentience and he faded away. And the song ending in that way is almost like a thank you. That's what it meant to me. And I think the instrument that actually like made me think that, not just the strings, but like it's this oboe. Oboes sound terrible until you put them in an orchestra. But I mean, it's true. Like if you go and listen to somebody play an oboe poorly, it's awful. It's the worst sound you will have ever heard in your entire life. But there's something mystical about that instrument when you hear it. Like it's very snake charmery is like the best way that I could think to put it.
It has kind of the eerie sound.
Yeah, but it also can sound like really like floaty at the same time. Like it
kind of ethereal.
Yeah, similar to how like similar to the strings, like it has a good fluid motion to the way that it produces sound.
Isn't the oboe what features in Peter and the Wolf?
I'm not sure.
There's like I know there's a more like well-known composition or piece that like does feature oboes really heavily. That's what I go for them. And sorry, very off track.
No, it's okay.
They are kind of weird.
Yeah, but like, and that's why like it's in such a stark contrast to what you've been listening to up to this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That when you hear it, it makes me think that like the composer is trying to direct you to another conclusion. And to me, that conclusion is like the way that I interpret that is that in that moment of defeat, Radahn has regained his own sentience. Like
his lucidity is back.
Yeah, he peers through the rot enough to be happy that it's over.
Yeah, so warrior's death.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think
Godfrey.
What was that?
It echoes Godfrey a little bit. Like if you think about
absolutely.
the Godfrey fight and like his attitude and how he did in the.
I mean, like Radahn is like, he is obviously not an inheritor of the golden lineage, right? But like he is more so in line with the morality and tenets of that line as they descend from like of Horalu, right? Like than any other character in the game. So I would absolutely agree with you. But yeah, I mean, I think I've made have already kind of alluded to this. Like, I don't know like what our grading system's top is, but he goes at the top for me. Like, and let's say it's S, like he's an S tier fight for me. I think that Radahn is one of the best and well crafted. I have one fight that I think is better than him.
I know which one that is.
Yeah, I know you do.
I'm excited to talk about that one.
Yeah, but what about you? What do you think?
I'm gonna give Radahn a B because I think that it is a great fight. The things that in terms of what it presents to the player story-wise, thematically, like it is imposing. It is a lot of payoff in the same way that there are different NPCs and bosses that are mentioned many times, while others are like just barely alluded to, if at all. Like some of them are more of a mystery, like when you are kind of trying to parse out who Moog is, for example,
Right.
when he's just the Lord of Blood, like for so much of the game. Like what they build up in the character of Radahn, I love. There's just something missing from the fight. Maybe it's from the flexibility of accommodating both the like command and conquer approach and the solo approach, where both are really fun and really good, and I enjoy them tremendously. But I feel like because they do both versions as like viable paths, there's a concession that was made somewhere that I can't even really put my finger on that doesn't quite elevate it to A tier. And also, it just feels really bad to get meteored downtown. You know, when he just decides to drop the hammer on you. With that being said, I think it's a really cool fight. It is an ambitious fight on like a design side. Like coming up with this, it's going to be all of us versus this one boss. Like that's kind of
it's different.
Kind of new.
It's different from how they would have like it is very different from how they would design a fight up to this point. Like there's nothing else that is truly like Radahn and the options that it provides.
Yep. And if nothing else, I respect that they're willing to push into new areas and break new ground.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's a good fight. I like the character. I like his helmet a lot.
I respect that. I respect that. But hey guys, that's what we think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know down in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe if you're enjoying this boss series, going through all the Elden Ring bosses. Until next time, take it easy.
O gathering of champions, the revels begin. The celebration of war. The Radahn Festival!